Om Shanti, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to the Monday meditation and workshop series. As always, every Monday we have a special guest. We invite a special yogi who has been on this path of pilgrimage path, which is a pilgrimage which leads us closer to God, divine, and to our highest, complete, and perfect self. And this is a unique journey, which is not a physical journey, which is not an intellectual journey either. It is a journey of the soul, which is not even a journey of your emotions. It is a journey of the spirit, the soul itself. And it is very hard to have a black and white uh, answer or response to that. And we cannot comprehend a lot of stuff just by intellectualizing the gyan, intellectualizing the, or we can't even comprehend things by just engaging at the emotional level. And that is what most of the bhakti is all about. We engage our emotions, we try to relate to God through our emotions, we have a faith in something which is not tangible. And and in the process we lose traction of truth itself. And to understand what is the real thing, what is real love, what is that God himself, you have to experience for yourself. And that's where meditation comes into picture. And one of the powerful things that we get as we go through this journey is the power of Baba's family, all these ancient souls, the souls who have these deep ancient memories of their divinity, we living in our divine self, in divine relationships, and having this deep relationship with God Himself. When we share and listen to the deep experiences of each one of us, something deep within us starts resonating. And that thing which moves within us helps us or guides us to come closer to what is real, what is personal. So, my personal request to every one of you is, as you're listening to these personal sharings, try to put yourself in the shoes of the speaker or the experiencer. Try to feel what the speaker is feeling and try to resonate with it. And then more deeper you start going in that direction, you start perceiving something which is intangible that will take us far and deep into our true divinity. Without any further ado, I invite Sister Sharona. Sister Sharona has been practicing this ancient Raj Yoga meditation for more than 4 decades. And she has been serving not only in Americas, but also in Israel, in multiple centers in Israel. And one of the very sacred place for a lot of other branches of our Kalpa tree, either it is Judaism or Christianity or Muslims. So it is a very sacred place. I mean, she is very close to the roots of all the branches that is emerging, but also she is very close to the root of the whole Kalpa tree, close to Baba, close to Yagya. So without any further ado, I invite Sister Sharona to take us into this journey of real love. Welcome.
Harsha, I'm deeply touched by your introduction. I think you touched on some very, very important points. And it is so true that we have been deceived by emotion. And so this gyan is going to be so important, not to remove emotion from the story, but to upgrade it, to elevate it, to take us out of the extremes of emotion, because surely that's where the deception comes in. And emotion is replaced then by pure feelings, isn't it? Something we wouldn't have had for so many lifetimes. And in that way, too, we're deceived. We think emotion is life, but pure feelings are. And so what a beautiful format, Harsha, by that we share our experiences, because experiences on the Brahman path would be full of very elevated, pure feelings. And I don't think the soul can get enough of that, personally. So let me start with my first experience. We'll see if we get all three in, according to this very interesting format that Harsha has created. But I must say, my first experience was one full out of God, which was very, very important for me because I was such a soul, unfortunately, who did not believe in God. I'm sorry to say, I did not believe in God at all. I had such a rejection of God, and it was so normal my whole life, that rejection, that I didn't even realize the extent to which I was distanced from him until in the course, when I took the 7-day course, I was told that today we're going to learn about God. And I found that I had such animosity in me towards the concept of God. And I had a very clever teacher because I told him I didn't want to learn about God, and that if we had to study about God, I would have to go. I'd have to leave. So he was very clever because he said, no, we don't have to study about God. Can you imagine? For the whole of the next 7 concepts, he never mentioned God again. And so I loved the knowledge, and I really felt that I was growing so much through knowledge, but by the time the concepts finished and I was listening to Murli, I really felt that something was missing. Left and right of me, people were having all sorts of wonderful experiences, and I wasn't having any experiences, obviously, right? I had cut God out. And the expression, that's really what ego is. Ego is edging God out. EGO. So I had an ego about the size of Cincinnati, Ohio. So of course there were no experiences. They were all suggesting to me, I was living in France at the time, and all the French family kept recommending that I go to London and experience some powerful yogis there, and there I would be able to have an experience. And that's exactly what happened. And I would like to share that with you. In those days, Global Cooperation House had not yet been built. I don't know how many of you have seen that. It's a vast complex. But we were all in just a tiny little place called Baba's house. We rented a hall in a community center in a nearby neighborhood for Murli. Otherwise, everything else happened in Baba's house during the day. So I went to London from France for what they called a weekend intensive. And it was, I think, Friday evening, Saturday, and Sunday up to lunch. And it was Sunday lunch. We were to go up to the senior who was sitting on the gadi conducting the last class and get our tray of lunch and take drishti. So I can say that right from the beginning of that little ceremony, I started feeling very strange. I was sitting way at the back. It was a room. It was like a living room and a dining room, and the wall had been taken down to make it one big room in a regular home, in a house on a residential street. So we were about 80, quite crammed into that, but I was sitting way in the back. And what I felt was as if, like I couldn't get up. My teacher, who had come with me from France, kept motioning me to get up, go take drishti on my lunch tray. But I had the feeling that if I stood up, I would not have any way of holding my molecules and cells together. I was beginning to have what I guess you could call a very bodiless experience, in which I really experienced the physical body as being made up of so many billions of cells. And I really didn't know how I could move without disturbing the pattern and the way they held together. My teacher kept looking at me and saying, go on, go on. But I had begun this otherworldly experience. And bit by bit, everybody had been taking their lunch trays, and there were only a few of us left. And I understood that I had to get up. So I tried. And then it was as if it was a long, long tunnel between me and the front of the room. And I could see the senior way at the end of this tunnel, full of light. But I really didn't know. I mean, I really felt I had to collect my molecules and walk very slowly down this tunnel so that I wouldn't lose any part of my body. And as I got closer to her, I started shaking. I could feel it. It was as if I was very much in the body again, but I was just shaking, big shakes, big shakes. My face was twitching. And when I got close to her and I knelt down to accept the drishti and the lunch tray, that's when I had the experience of Baba. And it was like this, like, most you could say like a fist or a force came out of the senior's head and just grabbed me at the level of the soul. And suddenly I was just up and then gone. It was like a world of red light. And I'm talking about an experience that happened 40 years ago. And yet I remember it as if it was like yesterday. So it was this world of red light, golden red light. But much more importantly was the love. There was so much love. There are not words to describe it. And that was a particularly important experience for me because that's what I had been looking for. And I had reached a point in my life where I was very close to concluding that the kind of love I was looking for simply didn't exist. Because I believed that there should be a kind of love which would never hurt, never. And it would be always there. Not there if you deserved it, and not there if you didn't deserve it, but there, always. And I'd never experienced that kind of love, even though I searched the world over for it. And even though I had good parents and a good family, I somehow sensed that that would not be called love, not real love, because it was a lot of, now I have the words for it, then I didn't, but it was a lot of dependency, a lot of attachment, a lot of selfishness. So I always rejected that that could be love. And then here I was in like this world of love. And I started crying, not just like, but really big, big sobs. Actually, for the first 10 years of my Brahmin life, when I tried to talk about this, share this experience, I could never do it without crying. So then the yogi, senior yogi, put the tray to the side, opened up her arms, and I just collapsed in them. Shaking and crying. And from that point, I just went around asking anybody wearing white, okay, what do you do? What do you don't do? I want to be like you. You could say it was the moment I took my Brahmin birth. And I entered a high, which basically I have never come down from over the next 40 years. Because what I realized at that point, which I'm sure all of you have also realized, was that the kind of love I was looking for is real. It does exist. A love that carries no neediness, no selfishness. It flows like an ocean, like a river, just flows. So that was my first very clear understanding from that experience instantly as I was coming out of that experience. Number one, the kind of love I was always looking for really exists. Number two, God really exists. Because up until that point, I just blocked him out. I didn't believe in God. But that experience, there was no way it could have been anything else except God, because the most overwhelming feeling was not just love, but according to what I now understand is real love, it was this feeling of belonging. I've never been able to grasp what Baba was saying in the 3 months since I'd started the course and was hearing Burley and was sitting there in London. You belong to me. I just approached it so theoretically. What I wouldn't have had an experience of belonging for so many lifetimes. I couldn't grasp it even theoretically, intellectually. I used to drill myself. Okay, belong. This pencil belongs to me. Okay, so I have rights on it. I couldn't grasp it from the heart at all. But in that experience, it was like the first time in such a long time that I felt I was in my home with someone that I was connected to forever. This belonging feeling was what was the most overwhelming. Because regardless of how we feel about God in this lifetime, when we come to Baba, I think most old souls would have had a big problem with this concept of belonging, because we probably didn't feel we belonged anywhere. In this old world, our ideals, our needs don't match the rest of the world. So we could have felt such odd ones out again and again. I felt that extremely my whole lifetime. And so, like, to have found where I fit in, and to have that feeling of belonging, it was just overwhelming, life transforming, I can literally say. So that's my experience, and I can say it's taken me the full 40 years to learn how to access that world and this mother, father, friend at will, and maintain or sustain that connection, and then also use it for my self-transformation. And I think one of the main insights I have around that is that, as time goes by, we begin to get motivated to cut out negative thinking, ordinary thinking, wasteful thinking, because we know it's not nice. I mean, mothers taught us that. But with Gyan, we begin to understand, and we really need to understand, that this has to be removed because of the harm such thoughts are doing to me. And the biggest harm, the greatest harm being done to the soul when I allow my mind to work with negative thoughts and ordinary or wasteful thoughts is not that it's my own battery which is depleting. I'm losing the beauty, the purity and the truth of the soul. But actually, that kind of energy, negative thoughts and feelings, is like static on the telephone line. That connection with God is filled with static. And you get to a point where you realize that any negativity, head or heart, even waste, even ordinariness, interferes with that connection. That connection is there. But in the beginning, we can have every kind of wonderful experience of Baba. That's a gift. It's just a gift because we really don't have a clean telephone line. We don't have a good connection. But he gives it as a gift so that we can believe it and know what we're working towards. But ultimately, he stops that because we have to do the work to clear the connection, to clean the line so that we can access him or undo the damage to the line that we ourselves have done. It's kind of like a mother or father will always pick up the child and carry her around up until age 1, maybe. But from age 1, 2, 3, the child might want to be picked up and carried, but the parent is always putting the child down, encouraging the child to walk. And even if the child falls, mommy or daddy isn't running to pick her up. She's saying, come on, you can do it, get up. So Baba's like that. Sometimes he's right by our side, holding our hand, but sometimes he's behind us. So that we get up and walk ourselves. And in our case, we're not learning to walk as much as we're learning to fly, aren't we? So one way of accessing that love, to be tuned into it and connected to it on a permanent basis, I have found means to keep a very strict focus on myself and weed out, full stop, all negativity or waste or ordinariness. And that involves overthinking, overprocessing, overanalyzing, and just understanding that Baba has a part, Baba has a role to play in every situation of my life. He's come in order to help me pay my karmic accounts. He's not going to pay them for me, but he's giving me the wealth, which recently Baba defined as knowledge, virtues, powers. So let me use knowledge, use virtues, use powers to keep my mind from thinking about a problem, thinking about a solution, or I should say, to keep my mind from worrying about it. Because thinking is one thing, worrying is another. We must not cross that line, because once we're into worry, we cut off this presence of God who is actually there to help me through everything, to help me pay every account. So it's like to access Baba, access that love on a more permanent basis, I have to give that love a chance. Give this Baba a chance. In other words, give him space in my mind, not that over-processing, over-analyzing, overthinking, but quiet, stillness. Because if there's something I need to decide, if there's something I need to do, he'll just drop that into my intellect. And if I'm clear and clean enough, I will catch it. But if I've crossed the line and I'm worrying, then I can't catch it. And ultimately, what he can just drop into my intellect as a solution, I myself can reach if I beat my brains out enough. But if you keep beating your brains out, you're exhausted by the time you get to a solution. You hardly have any energy left to put into practice what is your conclusion or your solution. So this is the easy Raja Yoga indeed, in which if I just keep myself clean, clear, soul conscious, God conscious, whatever I need will just drop into the intellect and I'll be able to move forward. So give him space. Sometimes it takes patience. Sometimes it takes trust, the trust that comes from experience and understanding. But accessing Baba's world, his world of truth and all those qualities really requires a lot of intention and clarity about the real methods to work through our karmic accounts at this point. Because truthfully speaking, as we reach the end of the cycle, there are going to be so many situations that come up, challenges, karmic accounts. Actually, there is no solution. We're never going to be able to figure out a solution with our own head. So how great if we're in this training to step aside, keep the mind still, keep the intellect clean, and just wait. Because when he drops in the intellect a solution or a decision, he also gives the power to be able to do it. And then you're just smiling when otherwise you could be traumatized or afraid or confused. And I would just say that one other thing in terms of accessing that love and using it for my life is very recently the drills he's given us, December 31st and December 16th, I believe, where he was saying, just do this exercise of 1 second throughout the day. Just take off your corporeal form and put on your incorporeal form. How lovely. Or take off your corporeal form and put on your body of light, your angelic form. Very appropriate to January 18th, or the month of January. And then he was saying in the second Murli, he was saying, how many times do you say the word I during the day? Every time you say the word I, say it as an incorporeal soul. And I found that actually I wasn't able to do it. I was so out of soul consciousness most of each and every hour of my waking day that it was only after each hour at traffic control that I had a chance to see how many times I used the word I without being soul conscious at all. So what I started to do, and I recommend this, it's very empowering, is at traffic control, just look over the past hour and catch a few lines where you use the word I, and just rerun the tape. And this time, hear what the person said to you, and you say back your sentence. But when you use the word I, be in your incorporeal form. It is extremely entertaining because it's like you see the whole scene again from above, just like Bubba does. And then there's aside from the fact that there's no drama and no like extremes, it's just pleasurable, and you're really living the experience of how, as Shakespeare said it, all the world's a stage and we are but actors on it. You really feel that that's just a line that the soul playing the part of Sharona said according to the script. And so it is such a practice for detachment, such a practice for detachment. And in any particular situation where the word I was used and in any way involved an emotion which isn't useful or an emotion which isn't positive, that's where this practice of taking off my corporeal form and putting on my angelic form was so useful. Because in the angelic form, it's not so much about detachment as it is about attachment to your qualities, your virtues, all the angelic reality. So you're looking down at that same scene because you're replaying it in your mind, and you feel what an angel would feel. You feel compassion for yourself, for the other, for the whole scene going on. You have right feelings, right thoughts. And the best part is that the more I was practicing this at traffic control, reviewing the scenes of that last hour, then that consciousness started entering my day in real time. So I can say that with a few days of practicing, I do believe I was able to start bringing the detachment and the angelic response more and more to my interactions, which is a very important thing. We want to be doing it because this is what pays our karmic accounts and accumulates a saving for us, right? So that's kind of it for my first experience. Should we just take a few moments to think about that, see how it works in your own life? If anybody has anything they want to say or ask, we can do that after a few minutes of silence, okay? Om Shanti. Does anybody want to say anything? I guess the chat is there if you want anything there. Otherwise, I will start my second experience. My second experience is about trauma, because the theme I chose for tonight is real love is love that heals and love that sets you free. Actually, it's a line from a song we're going to hear at the end, but I love that line because it is worthwhile to sit down and bring to consciousness how much Baba's love is healing us and setting us free. And it's because I had started that churning that when Harsha invited me to this, I said, okay, let's talk about this. I was not aware that I was a traumatized soul. Possibly all BKs are traumatized souls because they're so old. And they know what real love is. They know what real peace, true love, peace, true joy is. They know. And so here they are at the end of the cycle in a world which has absolutely nothing of any of that. So, of course, we would have been traumatized. We would have been traumatized just watching how we were failing our own selves as we took lifetime after lifetime in the Copper Age. Because coming into the Copper Age, we would have had very high standards. But as lifetimes went by, we would have been less and less able to maintain those standards because of entropy and how the soul was losing its degrees of purity. So I think just that alone is traumatizing to the soul. So I never thought that I was dealing with anything that other Brahmins wouldn't also be dealing with in terms of the kind of Maya, the kinds of Maya that came to me. But one day I was walking in the little village near Pandavavan, where all the shops are. I don't know if any of you have been to Madhuban yet. Those of you who have know there's a little village where we do all our shopping. So I was walking home from that little village and I saw a twisted rope, filthy twisted rope in a kind of mud puddle. And the very first thought that came to my mind was, it surprised me, it was this: I know what that rope was used for. So that surprised me very much. But within a few minutes, I understood, not through my own mind, but again, just like it came to me, that this was not a thought, this was a flashback. And I didn't know this word flashback, but it came into my mind. And then I started trying to remember everything I'd heard about flashbacks. What does it mean? And I started putting it all together, especially because I had been having a dream, a nightmare, the same nightmare, for about 2 or 3 years at that point in time. And I had turned to the dadis to ask what to do about them because they were very frightening and they were very, very real. There were scenes of torture and violence, abuse, deprivation. And it was the same dream each and every night. And the only difference was I would see a little bit more details of it. One time I saw a face. And just like my experience of Baba, it happened 40 years ago, but I still remember every detail. I'd begun to suspect that those dreams weren't dreams because I remember every detail of them, even today. Although I'm happy to say they've completely stopped for a long time by now. 15, 20 years, I haven't had even one of them. So God's love. And actually, it's a question here. Are we talking about the power of God's love? Or are we talking about the power of truth? And ultimately, I've come to understand that this is God's power. It's his true love, his true peace, his true joy. So any entry point into God that we take, it will be powerful for us because it's true. It's true. So how did the truth heal that trauma? Because I stopped having those dreams. Now, what's interesting is that the same year that I had that experience in the small village, and I started connecting the dots and realizing that, my gosh, those weren't nightmares. That was a flashback. It's my life. This is how I exited my last lifetime. It all seemed very clear to me suddenly, just walking back from the village. And curiously enough, at that time in Madhuban was a fellow who was a psychologist and who had kind of changed his practice more into reincarnation, a study of reincarnation. And he regressed his patients into past lifetimes and healed them through that. So he was there in Madhuban because he's the Australian, very close friend of the BKs in Australia. And he even actually wrote a book, I think, and did a video on meditation, regressions, and healing the heart or something like that. So he was there, even though he wasn't a BK, he was just a visitor, a guest. And I asked the dadis if I could go and have a meeting with him because I already knew that in meditation, you don't do past life regression. I mean, we do everything to just cut off the past. It's just scene 1, scene 2, scene 3, and a 5-scene play. So why confuse my role and my part of scene 4 and 5 by going backwards? So I knew that, but I was very curious about my conclusions of my experience in the village and my deductions. So the Dadi said, you can go to him just to ask him about those dreams, but no past life regressions. So I did that. And the fellow was very, very lovely, very welcoming. And he asked me 10 questions. He got my permission, and I said, yeah, it's fine. He asked me 10 questions, and all of my answers, I felt, were very vanilla. They were so neutral, and I was embarrassed. After about the 5th question, I was really embarrassed because it seemed to me like all my answers proved that this was probably all just my imagination. There was no trauma. There was nothing to bother anybody about. It's just my own problem. But at the 6th or 7th question, he just closed the book and he said, I don't have to go any further. And then he tells me, it's very, very clear that though you have been deeply, deeply abused and the target of a lot of violence, and you left your last lifetime very violently. So I don't have to go any further with the questions. And he closed the book. And I was shocked. I didn't know how he had drawn those conclusions. But then he pointed out the different symbols in my answers and how they indeed reflected all these various aspects. So I had total, complete professional confirmation that there was trauma from a last lifetime that probably I needed to deal with in some way or another. And that's when I began to get very honest. And here are now some insights from the experience of healing that trauma through God's love and everything about Baba, which is truth. I started getting really honest about different things in my life, which, if I looked at them, were odd. I had odd fears, like I was never, ever comfortable in the dark, walking at home, walking home at night alone. I was afraid of a dark room. And everywhere I went, this is all like subconscious. I never acknowledged it or recognized it as much as, when all of this started emerging in my consciousness. But I lost my train of thought. Well, let's just say that, yeah, I realized that I was always imagining a worst case scenario awaiting me. Like if I was just walking down the stairs, I would always see myself falling down the stairs, or worse, pushed from behind. Or if I was just crossing the street, I so regularly have to deal with the idea that any passerby could just kidnap me, in a car, could, in a flash, just take me. All of that stuff had been there so regularly in a almost unconscious level that I'd stopped paying attention to it, basically. But in this phase of my life, I really started paying attention to it. And I went to one or two like energy healers or homeopaths. I didn't get into my real source of trauma, but just to see if they could help, keep my mind stable, steady while I dealt with all these things. But none of them, maybe they contributed to the process, but I don't think very much. The only thing that I think really helped over time, and again, this is a question of practice and patience, is however much I could learn to do this thing called give it to Baba, give it to Baba, hand it over to Baba. And I think I tried every conceivable formula that I ever heard of from any senior. I did them all. And I really do believe that over time, that's what healed the trauma. So like, for example, I understood and I acknowledged that I had a lot of fear in me. Before that, I never saw myself as a fearful person, and I would have felt embarrassed. I would have felt that made me weak to be a person with fear. I never acknowledged it. But then, so first step is this honesty. Yeah, I have a lot of fear in me, or such insecurity. So I would sit in front of Baba, and I'm giving you the formula that I worked with for years, and it won't take you that long. In one way or another, just be very honest about what's there, and just be very honest about the damage it's doing to you, your beauty as a soul, and your new life as a child of God. Sit in front of a picture of Baba, Bapdada, Shiva coming through Brahma, your favorite picture, and realize the damage that this fear, this insecurity is doing to you, the soul. And it requires a kind of humility too, which is part of the game, in which you're acknowledging that, yeah, this is a weakness. It's still there, despite everything God is giving me and despite everything I'm receiving. And then you kind of like prepare yourself to hand it over by beginning to think what you would like to have there instead. So it's like, on the one hand, you prepare for handing it over by being very clear of the harm it's doing you, the harm it's doing others. This you can be literally listing, so that you reach this point while you're sitting in front of Baba where you're so fully aware that you don't want this anymore. You really don't want this anymore, and you really don't need this anymore, which is a very interesting aspect, because we might end up using a lot of these weaknesses in unhealthy ways. Of course, it would be unconscious, but on a most unconscious level, we could still be playing a victim even, you know? So you're sitting there in front of Baba with full recognition that this thing doesn't belong to me. I've taken a new life. I'm a pure, divine, direct creation of God, and its qualities in there. And this is staining God's new creation, these kind of thoughts and feelings. So not just the harm it's doing to me, but also the harm to others. My relationships pay for this underground insecurity, fear, etc. So these deep, deep realizations as a preparation for beginning to give it to him, by really acknowledging that this is not mine. This is something I picked up over that last lifetime, if not before, and it doesn't belong to me. But then you're also beginning to think about, what could you put in its place? What do I want there instead? And with those two realizations, because you're giving some time and you're in front of Baba, you make that promise to Baba. Baba, you will not take this from me, because I really, really don't want it anymore. I don't need it. I have no use for it. I know it's not mine, so you can take it from me. And what you'll find is that in that moment that you do that, in front of a picture of Baba, you will find that Baba is giving you something in return. Baba never takes anything from us without giving in return. He's a giver. So whatever you thought of in terms of what you feel you'd like to replace this thing with, that might come to your mind, but it might be something else entirely. But you will feel that you're getting something to replace it with. And all that's left to do to kind of seal the deal is then remember that. And keep using that new thing he gave you to replace the old one with as much as you can throughout the day. Keep renewing your promise. Keep renewing that experience in front of Baba. And I promise you, it won't go away all in one go, but you will start feeling lighter from the first day you do this. And then lighter and lighter and lighter, and then it'll be gone. This is my experience. I am completely free of all of that. You can walk me down the darkest street and I can be completely alone. Nothing. And I also don't have any of those weird, like, pre-visions of disaster. Finished, gone. So appropriate to January, the month of January, and especially January 18th, which is coming up, it's also very, very important to pull Baba as much as you can into your processing, your journeying, whatever process you're picking up and working with. like this handing over to Baba, do it in front of one of his portraits, as big a portrait of him as you can get. Look for different portraits of Baba. They're all available on the internet. I'm talking about Shiv Baba coming through Brahma. If, for example, you said you wanted to replace fear with faith, or insecurity with power, look for a picture of Baba that makes you feel this is Baba in full faith. This is Baba with great strength and power. Find such a portrait and give yourself time to get to know your Baba. This is Avyat Bapdada, who's alive and well in the subtle region with that same energy. And his face is the portal, or the cord, which moves me from wherever I'm at to the subtle regions where he is at. And the full brunt of the energies of faith or the energies of strength or courage will just surround me. We remember Shiv Baba, the point, and we follow him in terms of consciousness. This is to enable our consciousness to go higher and higher. But we remember Brahma Baba, and we follow him in terms of how he took all that God was giving and put it into his behavior, his attitude, his way of thinking, his feelings. So how important it is to be in front of a picture of Bapdada, Shiva coming through Brahma, give eyes and a face to the qualities of faith or the qualities of power. Gateway to the subtle regions in which you can be in front of Shiv Baba coming through Brahma and just be embraced by these truths. Baba calls it being colored by his company. We have to do these things. They're magical. I can honestly say, how many years if I weren't a Brahmin? And how rich would a psychiatrist have gotten through the number of appointments I would have had to make with him to get rid of all those terrors which were haunting the soul? It was literally the impossible made possible that he cleared that out, healed it, indeed. So we take a few minutes on that, unless there's any questions. There was something down here. It's the person's books. I don't know. You want to know the name of the person who wrote that book? I don't know. I really don't remember. It was so long ago. But you could connect with Charlie, or maybe Harsha can connect with Charlie to find out about this fellow, because Charlie is the one who brought him to Madhuban. You can just ask about this fellow who did regression therapy and reincarnation and is close friend of the Brahmins, and you could get the name that way.
Yeah, actually, there is a nice documentary that was built by BKs. If you remember, Lee Bai was there, who was narrating the story.
Oh,
I can
that's
find
different. That. Yeah, that's different from this. This was this psychologist wrote this book, and he used some BKs for some visuals, but he also, shared his clients and their stories and all of that. So, yeah, we take a few minutes just to see how all of this can fit into your own journey? Shanti. My third experience is more like just general. And if I sum up my Brahmin life at this point, I definitely experience becoming more and more powerful, spiritually powerful, which is a great thing. And I must say, it really is easy Raja Yoga. We make it complicated. We need a good picture of Shiv Baba coming through Brahma. We need to be able to sit in front of that face, become the little souls we are, take off our corporeal body, put on our body of the incorporeal form, just be a little soul, just be with Baba in the home. And then we need to take that off and put on the body of light and sit on the bench with Baba. Just be. You're in a very elevated consciousness. I'm sharing my experience here. And you just have this chat with Baba. Maybe you're chatting about, or I'm chatting about, a defect I'm seeing in myself, and I really want it to change. And I'm telling you that just by taking it up with Baba in the friendliest, easiest of ways, and don't keep talking all the time, say something and then just wait. You'll see that it becomes a conversation. Thoughts will drop into your head, and then you can respond with a thought. And it might even move from an exchange of thoughts to an exchange of feelings, and you get to a point where you're just melting. And that defect changes. It could be in 24 hours, it could be in 1 week, but it will change. It's shocking. It's total magic. Anything and everything I've put in front of Baba, and I said, oh, what do you think about this? And I've just been in honest conversation and exchange with him. It's changed. And that's what this whole month of January is about, let alone these 3 days of global bhakti. We should clear out everything as much as possible to give ourselves time to be in the subtle regions, have these chit-chats with Baba, and be in the soul world, which is almost essentially to take power, pure power, to bring power, empower the vision I have of my highest self, my truest self. And I can tell you, these are the things I've been working on. Talking about healing, right? Let's look at vitamin A. What vitamin A gives you? I realized at some point how controlling I was. But God's kind of vitamin A, just by realizing, Baba, I need to be more accepting. I need to be more allowing. I need to be more appreciative. Just with this kind of conversation with Baba, I find that in the last while, this has happened. Doesn't even occur to me that commenting, criticizing, correcting, which was so much part of my character before, it's changing, it's melting. I am naturally interacting, naturally responding from a point of view of health, spiritual health. Vitamin A, appreciating, accepting, allowing. It's a beautiful thing. You take any point from Gyan. This other person is just playing their part. Whatever their part is, and however poor or well they're playing it, does it really matter? I mean, the realization that the only thing that matters, all of this study, it's not for me to change someone else, it's for me to change me. So the only thing that matters is how well am I playing my part? So these points that we would have heard again and again, they come to your mind in front of Baba with the full brunt of his energy behind it. And it all becomes so real. Empowerment. I think what started moving me into this power, just altogether more power in my Brahmin life, is this realization that it can't just be love. I remember Daddy Janki telling me this at some point. She said, Sharona, it's not just love. If it's just love, it's dangerous. There also has to be power. Because if there isn't power, your love can become just attachment or emotion with nothing spiritual in it. Real love is love that uplifts, inspires, encourages. And sometimes that takes a lot of power on your part, because maybe it means saying no to those who are close to you and to those who want you to give a different answer, or they want your help or cooperation. So power as a balance to love. And there you have vitamin D, discerning. We do have the power to discern what is the accurate way to see any given situation, what's the accurate way of dealing with it. And we do have the power to act accordingly. But first we have to be very honest about maybe the lack of that, and just those chit-chats with Baba. Look at him. How powerful a kind of love he brought to humanity. If he would have given in to the customs and systems of the world, you and I wouldn't be here today. But he stood his ground. This is vitamin C, courage. He learned to take a stand, but with dignity, royalty, peace. And we have to learn this too. This is what January is for. We get permission, special permission to be in front of Baba and understand him, his life, his decisions, his choices, and take from him those energies, because he's still available to us for that. Brahma Baba stepped aside from everything that was the culture of India. And on the basis of his understanding of Shiv Baba's teachings, he actually evolved a whole new culture, Brahmin culture. It's not Hinduism. It's not Indian. It's not European or American or anything. It's completely unique, and you need a lot of power to take a stand for it, which is what all of us are experienced in when we say, I won't eat my mother's cooking because I need purity in the body as well as in the mind. And food cooked by people who aren't observing purity will carry those vibrations in it. Vitamin B, borders, boundaries. We will need to set them in order to really be respectful and to help cultivate this Brahmin culture, because Brahmin culture is the forerunner to the golden age, the culture of the golden age. We have to set borders and boundaries. So, for example, a close friend or a relative, a son, a daughter, a mother, a father could ask me to pick up cigarettes duty-free while I travel to India, but I won't do it. And she could be hurt, or she could not understand why. But my principles, my values, to set borders and boundaries about what I will do and what I will not do in the name of love. So like this chit chat, and I can also say a very, very beautiful practice that I take up sometimes for months at a time is at night, already in bed, before taking rest, I just have a notebook beside my bed and I say goodnight to Baba as if a chit chat, but in writing. And I just share anything about the day. So it could be, hi, Baba. How are you? I'm doing okay. I'm remembering this morning when I X, Y, or Z, or so-and-so, A, B, or C, anything, just this little chit chat. And when I finish writing, I wait. It's a little bit like I was saying before, I just wait. And the first thing that comes into my mind, I pretend that that's Baba, and I write that down. So there's Sharona and Baba, Sharona and Baba. And I can tell you the most surprising things come up. Sometimes I read over past correspondences like this, and I have tears in my eyes. It's so perfect what I imagine Baba is telling me. It's so deep, wise, and magical. Because I wouldn't have been there. I wouldn't have been at that level of wisdom. But those few words that I would catch always would be. So all in all, what I'm saying is, we really want to keep this easy Raja Yoga, and it really needs to be. Because by the end of the cycle, we're tired, frankly. We're tired of all these other methods for self-transformation. We have to develop this relationship with Baba. We have a real, live, living angel watching over us. We have to use him. Not to mention a real, live father, mother who's eternal and completely present for my benefaction only. We have to use him. Shiv Baba for power, the home for such peace, comfort, safety. And then the subtle regions, Bhaktala, for literally decorating myself with all those virtues and qualities that he used in his life. What I wanted to say is that It is a very beautiful experience, and it's the experience of anybody who has raised their hand in front of God and say, yes, I want to help you in this task of world renewal. It's magical as only you could imagine a direct connection with God would be. And it's full of friendship and companionship and support and love. But we have to clean up that intellect. We have to give him space. And in a word, I think it's all about trust. At that point in time where we're the least able to trust love or goodness or happiness or anything, we have to trust that it's come in front of us, and that we can and we will ultimately be tuned in only to that, and we will be operating and running off of that alone. So trust, I think, kind of sums it all up. Trust in goodness, trust in greatness, trust the absolute perfection of this drama, and no more worries. Stay very light.
Thank you.
Okay.
If anyone have any questions or comments, feel free to, before we go into final meditation.
You're on mute, Jane.
Hello.
Hi.
Okay. I did my virtue scope for this year. And when you said that, I said, oh my God. You know, I kept trying to fake it and go through the cards again and again, but I kept getting the same virtue. And guess which virtue I got like 2 or 3 times? Trust. Ping pong, ping pong.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's a big one. For us
yeah.
Brahmins.
There you go.
Yeah, it's a big one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, it's a good one. Yeah.
Olga, you look so beautiful with that Shiv Baba coming out of your ears. That's a good backdrop.
Thank you.
Very good backdrop.
Thank you, sister. I just want to thank you for being so brave and talking about this. I think it takes a lot of vulnerability to be able to be naked in front of everybody and talked about something so private. And I had read a couple of books, and probably not by the same Australian doctor, but 2 American PhDs who dedicated their lives to this type of approach to healing fears from events in a past life. And I was always fascinated by that. And I am so happy that you are well now.
Yeah. And, it doesn't feel to me like any kind of courage is involved here. And I didn't even feel like I was sharing anything private. I mean, you get to a point where you see there isn't really anything you're going to go through as a Brahmin that all Brahmins wouldn't be going through. It's just part of the obstacle course, and it's kind of our duty, if we've hit the obstacle course as per the training of the pilgrimage, and we figure out a way how to get ourselves able to jump high enough over it. Of course, we share that with everybody else. So thank you, but I don't feel it's any particular courage or private.
I think it takes a lot of courage, but I'm speaking from my own opinion, of course. I think it takes a lot of courage to be able to go into that depth of something that happened. And it was beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you. For sure, any of our negative tendencies would have its roots in one or another insecurity, one or another loss of truth, one or another aspect of truth which has been lost. So that's why I think Baba loves honesty so much, because once we're just honest about it in front of him, we have a handle on the root. and he will help so much. You know, he puts things in the intellect, and you can know, you can learn, you can understand everything. He's a wonderful teacher. He's a wonderful therapist and counselor. Maybe we take a minute just to finish up together.